Forgotten front porches. Evening conversations that shaped small-town America, the glow of gas lamps and quiet streets as the sun dipped low beyond the horizon. The streets of a small American town seemed to exhale, settling into a calm hush that only evening could bring. The faint glow of gas lamps flickered along cobblestone paths, their soft light casting long, wavering shadows across porches, fences, and the well-trodden streets where children had raced earlier in the day. Smoke from a nearby chimney curled lazily into the lavender sky, carrying with it the comforting scent of wood fires and evening suppers. Porches, simple and sturdy, dotted the town like sentinels, each one telling its own story. The faint creak of a rocking chair echoed through the quiet, accompanied by the distant bark of a dog or the rhythmic clatter of a train moving along tracks that threaded the countryside. These were the evening's natural symphonies, subtle yet grounding, offering a gentle soundtrack to the end of the day. Families began to emerge, drawn by the cool evening air and the promise of conversation. Children, cheeks flushed from a day spent running barefoot in sun-dappled yards, settled into worn steps while parents leaned against railings, their voices blending into a chorus of familiar greetings, soft laughter, and the occasional sigh of contentment. The porch became both a stage and a refuge, a place where stories could be shared, secrets whispered, and plans for the coming days quietly formed. It was on these porches that life revealed its slower rhythm. Here, a neighbor might pause to talk about the day's work at the mill, while another mentioned a letter received from a distant relative. The cadence of the town's heartbeat was found in these small exchanges, in the pauses and laughter, in the quiet acknowledgement of shared existence. Every clap of wind through the trees, every chirp of crickets, reminded townsfolk that the night had arrived, but with it, a sense of safety, community, and continuity. There was an unspoken magic to the glow of the gas lamps. Their lights softened the edges of reality, turning rough wood and brick into warm, inviting silhouettes. Even as darkness fell, the streets were not empty. The porches were alive, each one a beacon of conversation, reflection, and connection. Here, history did not feel distant. It breathed through the air, in the slow drawl of voices, the scent of evening meals, and the comfortable presence of familiar faces. As the night deepened, the town seemed to shrink and expand all at once, small in size but vast in its richness of stories, in the unseen threads connecting one porch to the next. Every flicker of lamp light hinted at tales waiting to be told, and every gentle gust of wind whispered the promise of shared moments. In this serene atmosphere, the ordinary became extraordinary, and the simple act of sitting together on a front porch was nothing less than a quiet revolution of human connection, a nightly ritual that, in its own unassuming way, shaped the heart of small-town America. By the time the first stars began to blink awake above, the streets had transformed into a gentle tableau of life's continuity. Porch lamps glowed like fireflies, homes exhaled the aromas of supper and wood smoke, and the town's collective heartbeat slowed into the rhythm of the approaching night. The stage was set, not for grand gestures, but for the quiet intimacy of conversation, reflection, and shared existence, a world waiting patiently for those who would listen, watch, and remember. Section 2. Stories carried on the evening breeze as twilight deepened. The murmur of conversation drifted from porch to porch, carried lightly on the evening breeze. The gentle sigh of leaves rustling in the trees intertwined with the soft laughter of children still lingering after dinner, their games winding down under the watchful glow of the lamps. Each voice seemed to carry fragments of the past, stories both old and new, weaving a tapestry that connected generations through shared words and gentle recollections. On one porch, a father spoke softly of the town's founding, recounting tales of cobblestones laid by hand, of the first general store that had once been the heart of commerce. His daughter, leaning against the railing, listened intently, imagining the muddy streets of long ago and the bustle of townsfolk in hats and bonnets, their hands busy with daily tasks. The story was alive, not just a lesson from history, but a vivid memory resurrected through speech and imagination. Nearby, an elderly woman's laughter joined the chorus, telling of summers spent chasing fireflies and evenings when the smell of freshly baked bread mingled with the earthy scent of rain on warm soil. Her neighbors nodded, adding their own memories, until the air itself seemed to shimmer with recollections. Each tale was a gentle reminder of lives lived fully, of human resilience and small joys stitched into the fabric of everyday life. The breeze carried these stories across fences and streets, wrapping around the corners of houses and slipping through open windows. It was a subtle, intangible thread linking porch to porch, home to home, allowing each listener to feel part of something greater, a shared history grounded in the small, often unnoticed moments. The clatter of a horse's hoof or the distant whistle of a train punctuated the dialogue, echoing the rhythm of a simpler time, when life was slower but no less meaningful. Evening drinks were poured, cups of tea or warm cider, their steam curling upward and mingling with the night air. The aroma of simmering stew, of bread baked that afternoon, mingled with faint traces of lavender from a neighbor's window boxes. All of it, the sounds, the smells, the stories, combined to create a sensory embrace, one that wrapped townsfolk in a quiet, unspoken intimacy. Here, history was not just remembered, it was felt, breathed, and gently lived again, one porch conversation at a time. As darkness deepened, the town seemed suspended in a gentle twilight between memory and reality. Lanterns flickered, casting golden pools on wooden steps, while the breeze carried whispers of ancestors who had walked these streets long before. In those moments, listeners might feel the weight of generations, the continuity of human connection, and the subtle beauty of evenings where stories were more than mere words. They were the threads of a shared, living history. The quiet symphony of porch life continued as night settled in. Doors were left ajar, chairs shifted gently on worn boards, and neighbors leaned in closer, listening intently to one another. Each story, each shared memory, was a seed planted in the soil of small-town life, destined to grow into a legacy of recollection and understanding. And as the stars emerged, twinkling faintly above the rooftops, it was clear that these evening tales were more than entertainment. They were the lifeblood of community, the heartbeat of tradition, and the gentle rhythm guiding everyone towards sleep with a sense of peace and belonging. Section 3. The whisper of secrets between neighbors as night deepened, porches transformed into quiet stages for whispered confidences. In the soft glow of lanterns and kerosene lamps, neighbors leaned closer, voices hushed yet rich with intimacy, sharing stories that would never leave the wooden boards beneath their feet. There was a magic in this, an unspoken trust that what was said in the evening would remain safely tucked into the folds of night. Grandmothers spoke of long-forgotten romances, of dances held in barn halls where lanterns swayed and fiddles hummed into the night. Fathers recounted tales of work and ambition, of harvests that were plentiful one year and miserably meager the next, the rhythm of toil punctuated by laughter and occasional sighs. Children, seated on the edges of porches or in their parents' laps, listened with wide eyes, absorbing the cadence of a life far removed from the rush of modern days. The secrets shared were not scandalous. They were intimate glimpses into the lives of ordinary people, revealing the textures of small-town existence. The smell of polished wood mingled with the earthy scent of a recent rain, and the faint aroma of tobacco from a pipe added a smoky warmth to the air. Each story, each secret shared, carried an unspoken lesson, the importance of connection, of understanding one another beyond the superficial. From one porch, a man spoke quietly of hardships endured during the winter of 1913, when the river froze solid and deliveries could not reach the town. From another, a woman recounted a night when a storm had toppled the town's oak tree, yet neighbors banded together to salvage timber and rebuild fences. Through these narratives, listeners glimpsed resilience and compassion, the subtle strength of a community bound by shared experience. Even as words floated softly into the night, the ambient sounds of the town continued to weave around them. The creak of rocking chairs, the rustle of skirts brushing against porches, and the occasional hoot of an owl created a backdrop that seemed designed for reflection. In these moments, Time itself felt suspended, history not confined to textbooks, but lived and remembered in the gentle rhythms of human interaction. Children yawned but stayed, clinging to every word, while adults allowed themselves a rare vulnerability, admitting fears and dreams long held close. The conversations were threads connecting past to present, young to old, listener to storyteller. Every shared anecdote became a gentle bridge, linking hearts across porches and years, shaping a collective memory that would outlast the flicker of lantern light. As night deepened further and the stars blinked faintly above, the town seemed to breathe in unison with its inhabitants. Stories lingered in the cool air, settling into the nooks of homes and hearts alike. There was a soothing cadence in this ritual, the comfort of knowing that, even in the dark, one was never truly alone. The whispers of secrets were not just entertainment. They were a gentle lullaby, a weaving of human lives into a shared tapestry, softly guiding all toward rest, reflection, and a deep sense of belonging. Section 4. The rhythm of evening chores. Evening on a small-town porch was never entirely still. While conversations flowed, there was always the quiet rhythm of daily chores winding down, a backdrop of movement and purpose that shaped the night. Children ran lightly across yards, collecting firewood or helping with chores while their laughter mingled with the soft creak of gates and the gentle clink of watering cans. The world seemed to slow, yet remain alive in its small, deliberate motions. In kitchens, the aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering stews drifted outward, reaching the porches like an invisible invitation. The warmth of ovens contrasted with the crisp evening air, creating a comforting dichotomy. Parents would wipe their hands on aprons, lean against railings, and watch the sun dip lower, sharing fleeting glances with neighbors as if acknowledging a universal understanding of life's simplicity. Animals played their part in this nightly symphony. Chickens clucked softly in their coops, dogs padded on wooden floors, and the occasional horse whinnied in the distance as the last of the day's work was completed. These familiar sounds created a sense of security and constancy, a gentle heartbeat beneath the more vibrant threads of conversation and human activity. The chores themselves were more than simple tasks. They were rituals, connecting individuals to both their immediate needs and the larger cycles of life. Gathering water from wells, tending to the garden, or stacking firewood became meditative acts, performed with an awareness of the delicate balance between effort and reward. The day's fatigue merged with satisfaction, each motion echoing the invisible poetry of small-town life. Even as work concluded, the movement never fully ceased. A woman might sweep the porch with measured strokes, the bristles whispering across the boards. A father might oil the hinges on a gate, listening to the rhythmic squeak and release. Children carried lanterns along pathways, the glow bouncing off whitewashed walls, casting soft shadows that danced like ghosts of the day's labors. It was in these moments that the town's pulse became tangible, a reminder that every life, though small and seemingly ordinary, was part of a greater rhythm. The combination of chores, conversations, and casual observations formed a delicate harmony, a nocturne played by the hands of those who knew that quiet diligence could be as soothing as the softest lullaby. From porch to yard to kitchen, this steady cadence reinforced a sense of continuity. Generations were united in the same motions, repeating practices learned from parents and grandparents. There was comfort in this, a silent reassurance that life moved forward not only through grand events, but also through the accumulation of gentle, deliberate acts performed each night. As darkness deepened and lanterns flickered, the evening chore rhythm tapered to a soft hum. The town seemed to exhale, a slow, collective relaxation settling over every home. And in the quiet that followed, listeners and observers alike could sense the subtle poetry in the mundane, the soft music of a community living in harmony with its surroundings, a music that, when paired with stories shared on porches, lulled all toward introspection and rest. Section 5. Stories that traveled with the wind. Evening on a porch was as much about the wind as it was about voices. Soft breezes carried fragments of conversations, drifting through streets and alleys, brushing past open windows, and curling around chimneys. These gentle currents became vessels for stories, carrying tales from one household to the next, creating an invisible thread of connection throughout the town. A neighbor might overhear a humorous mishap from across the street, or catch the faint echo of a memory shared by a grandparent. In this way, stories moved freely, unbound by walls or doors, nourishing both the teller and the listener. Many of the stories were simple, rooted in everyday life, tales of harvest misadventures, runaway chickens, or children's innocent pranks. Yet others carried weight, recounting hardships endured during harsh winters, fleeting romances, or long-forgotten town events that shaped collective memory. Each story, no matter how trivial or profound, found its place in the evening air, lingering like the scent of blooming jasmine or the faint smoke of a neighbor's fireplace. These stories did more than entertain, they educated. Younger ears learned the unspoken rules of the town, absorbing lessons about kindness, resilience, and community without ever attending a formal classroom. Parents would weave subtle wisdom into humorous anecdotes, and older residents often imbued their recollections with cautionary notes or encouragement, ensuring the town's traditions endured. Even the pauses in storytelling were meaningful. A gust of wind might rustle the leaves, prompting a reflective silence, or the distant bark of a dog might punctuate a punchline, eliciting shared laughter. The ebb and flow of narrative mirrored the rhythms of the night, alternating between tension and release, curiosity and satisfaction. Listeners became attuned to these shifts, their senses sharpening as stories unfolded in real time. Occasionally, a tale would transcend the immediate environment. Travelers passing through town, merchants, itinerant workers, or wandering musicians would contribute snippets of distant lands, introducing new customs, forgotten legends, or intriguing mysteries. Porches became informal theaters where the world beyond the town could be imagined and felt, even without leaving home. The wind acted as both messenger and companion, carrying these stories into the hearts of all who listened. The act of telling and hearing stories also reinforced empathy. As neighbors shared moments of joy, loss, or triumph, they glimpsed the inner worlds of others, understanding perspectives shaped by experiences both familiar and foreign. Even subtle expressions, a wistful sigh, a quick grin, or a softened tone, added layers of meaning, reminding everyone that human connection often thrived in the quietest of spaces. By the time lanterns dimmed and children's yawns grew heavier, these stories had already left their imprint, lingering in memory like the aftertaste of sweet tea or the gentle scent of wood smoke. They were threads woven into the fabric of the night, invisible yet vital, shaping the way the town thought, laughed, and dreamed together. And as adults eventually rose from the porch steps, stretching tired limbs while the night embraced the town, the wind continued its quiet work, carrying stories toward tomorrow, ensuring that the voices of the past remained alive in the present. Section 6. The light of lanterns and laughter as twilight deepened, porches glowed warmly under the soft flicker of oil lanterns. Their gentle illumination cast dancing shadows across weathered wooden floors, creating a comforting cocoon where conversation could flourish. The warm light revealed details often missed in daylight, the delicate carving on a banister, the slight tilt of a rocking chair, or the glint of a pocket watch catching the lantern's glow. In this golden haze, stories took on a new life, their voices amplified by the intimacy of shared space. Laughter became a vital companion to storytelling. It echoed through the narrow streets, rolling off the houses and bouncing back from fences, mingling with the distant hoot of an owl or the soft chirp of crickets. The sound of laughter, like the glow of the lanterns, was both reassuring and unifying. Even the smallest chuckle connected neighbors, reinforcing a sense of belonging and shared humanity. It reminded listeners that, despite hardships or mundane routines, moments of joy could still be found in the simplicity of a summer evening. Porches, illuminated by lanterns, became stages for improvisation. A neighbor might recount a humorous anecdote, only for another to add their own embellishments, creating a collective narrative that evolved with each telling. Children listened wide-eyed, occasionally chiming in with their interpretations, infusing stories with imagination and spontaneity. Elders, with gentle smiles, guided the rhythm, subtly teaching patience, wit, and the art of attentive listening. The physicality of lanterns also mattered. Lighting one required care, filling the reservoir with oil, trimming the wick, striking a match. These small, deliberate actions grounded people in the present, creating moments of mindfulness in an otherwise bustling world. The soft glow offered not only illumination but a metaphorical light, casting away the shadows of uncertainty, fear, or isolation. It reminded everyone on the porch that even in darkness, warmth and clarity could be found. As evening wore on, stories became more reflective. Tales of triumphs and failures from past generations merged with present concerns, creating a temporal tapestry where past and present coexisted. A story of a town-wide harvest might segue into a lesson on perseverance, or a tale of a childhood mishap might prompt laughter mingled with gentle advice. This interplay between entertainment and introspection allowed listeners to drift between emotions, creating a rich, immersive experience. Sometimes, a single story would draw the entire street into a shared reverie. The quiet hum of distant activity, the clip-clop of a horse-drawn cart, the occasional creak of a gate, the soft rustle of leaves, blended with the cadence of voices, forming a symphony unique to that night. Even those not actively participating felt its pull, drawn into the collective consciousness of the community. As lanterns dimmed and conversation slowed, the porch became a space for quiet reflection. Eyes followed the path of flickering light, ears caught the fading echoes of laughter, and hearts held onto the warmth of connection. In these moments, the town seemed suspended in time, safe and nurturing, a world apart from the challenges that lay beyond its borders. By the time the last lantern flickered out, stories and laughter had left their mark, lingering like an invisible imprint on everyone who had listened. The night absorbed them, preserving them in memory, ready to be recalled on another evening when porches would again glow with light and voices would again mingle in harmony. Section 7. Secrets shared beneath the stars. As the night deepened, porches became more than just places for storytelling. They transformed into sanctuaries for confidences, whispered hopes, and carefully guarded secrets. Beneath the gentle watch of stars, neighbors spoke in hushed tones, trusting the evening's intimacy to protect their words. The rhythmic rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of crickets created a natural privacy, masking voices from wandering ears while lending the conversation a serene, almost magical quality. These shared secrets were often small but significant. A father confiding his concerns about a son's first job, a young woman revealing her dreams of studying beyond the town, or an elderly neighbor reflecting on regrets and lessons learned. Such exchanges built invisible threads between people, strengthening bonds that could weather hardship, misunderstandings, and the slow passage of time. The porch became a crucible where trust was formed, loyalty tested, and empathy nurtured. The stars above seemed to amplify these moments, their silent presence encouraging honesty and reflection. Children lying on rugs or leaning against their parents' knees felt the gravity of these exchanges without fully understanding, absorbing the rhythms of trust and companionship that would shape them in years to come. The adult voices, softened by the night, carried warmth, patience, and the kind of wisdom that only comes from lived experience. Sometimes, the night air carried hints of distant aromas, a neighbor's dinner cooling on the kitchen table, the earthy scent of freshly turned soil from a nearby garden, or the faint smoke of a wood-burning stove. These sensory details, subtle yet tangible, wove themselves into the conversations, creating a multisensory tapestry that made secrets feel safe, tangible, and meaningful. The environment itself seemed to cradle the community, encouraging reflection and vulnerability. Confidences shared on porches also reinforced a sense of history. Stories of family struggles, migration, or small-town triumphs connected listeners to the past, reminding them that their present lives were part of a continuing narrative. The porch became a repository of collective memory, each secret another thread in the intricate fabric of the town's identity. It was here that history was not merely recounted but lived and felt, echoing in the quiet nods and knowing smiles exchanged under the stars. Occasionally, a shared secret would spark a quiet moment of laughter, relief, or understanding. A minor embarrassment, once revealed, might dissolve tension and foster camaraderie. The emotional resonance of these exchanges lingered, enhancing the sense of community long after lanterns were extinguished and the stars faded behind the morning light. As the night wore on, listeners discovered that the porch was also a stage for gentle advice. Stories intertwined with guidance, an elder's tale of a youthful mistake, or a neighbor's recounting of an unexpected triumph, offered insights without preaching. This subtle mentoring, delivered under the soft stars and warm lantern light, strengthened bonds while shaping character and judgment in ways that were almost imperceptible but deeply enduring. By the time the night drew to a close, the porches had served their purpose, fostering connection, preserving the town's memory, and allowing hearts to open in ways that daylight seldom permitted. The whispered secrets and shared stories left lasting imprints on those who had been present, invisible threads of trust and understanding ready to be recalled, retold, or quietly cherished in the years to come. Section 8. Music, laughter, and the rhythm of evenings. As the night deepened, porches often became stages for subtle performances, the strumming of a guitar, the soft hum of a lullaby, or the occasional burst of laughter that rippled across the wooden boards. Music, in its unassuming forms, served as a gentle glue binding neighbors together. It might be a simple tune passed down through generations, a song composed during a long day of work, or even the rhythmic clatter of spoons against cups as families shared a late-night meal. These sounds created a living soundtrack for the evening, weaving warmth and familiarity into the town's nighttime ambience. Laughter, too, became an essential part of these gatherings. It was never loud or intrusive. Rather, it carried the soft cadence of shared understanding. A joke, a playful tease, or the recollection of a humorous mishap invited smiles and quiet chuckles. This laughter reinforced bonds, reminding everyone present that joy could be found even amidst the mundane rhythms of small-town life. Its resonance lingered in the air, intertwining with the night's cooler breezes and the faint rustling of leaves, leaving traces of warmth that lasted long after the conversation ended. Porches offered more than entertainment. They cultivated a shared sense of rhythm in the evening hours. The ebb and flow of stories, punctuated by music and laughter, mirrored the slow pulse of the night itself. It was a rhythm that helped listeners unwind, encouraging them to leave the day's worries behind. Children, curled on rugs or leaning against protective adults, learned to recognize this cadence, internalizing the gentle patterns of communal life and the comforting reassurance of predictable, yet ever-changing, nighttime rituals. In some homes, the clinking of a teacup or the occasional creak of a rocking chair became an improvised percussion, subtly accentuating the night's melodies. Neighbors might join in spontaneously, clapping, tapping, or singing along, turning a solitary porch into a quiet symphony of camaraderie. These moments, though simple, were deeply human, small gestures of participation that fostered belonging and highlighted the beauty in everyday, shared experiences. Even weather added its own music to the evening. The patter of a light rain against wooden shingles, the distant roll of thunder softened by hills, or the whisper of wind through trees all merged with human voices to create a soothing composition. This interplay between nature and community made each night distinct, a living, breathing reminder that the town was part of a larger, harmonious world. The porch, under these circumstances, also became a sanctuary for reflection. Music and laughter opened space for thought, inviting contemplation without demanding attention. Adults revisited memories, children imagined futures, and the simple joy of being present in the moment strengthened bonds across generations. It was here that lessons were learned silently, the value of patience, the art of listening, and the gentle power of shared enjoyment. By the end of such evenings, as lanterns flickered low and music softened, the porch had completed its nightly transformation. It had evolved from a simple architectural feature into a crucible of connection, creativity, and shared emotional resonance. Those who stepped away carried with them a sense of calm, a quiet knowledge that even in a world full of uncertainty, there existed a small sanctuary where human warmth, rhythm, and laughter converged effortlessly. Section 9. Stories that spanned generations. Porches were not just places for conversation and music, they were libraries of lived experience. Each evening, as twilight deepened into night, elders would recount stories that spanned generations, carrying lessons, warnings, and the quiet magic of memory. These narratives were not merely tales, they were living histories, bridging the past with the present. Children listened with wide eyes, learning not from textbooks, but from voices imbued with the texture of real life, voices that carried the scents, sights, and sounds of days long gone. The stories varied in scope and tone. Some were intimate recollections of family triumphs or challenges, the time a grandparent built a barn with only the help of a few hands, or when a great-aunt weathered a harsh winter with resilience and resourcefulness. Others stretched further, recounting the town's collective experiences, fires that reshaped streets, harvests that brought hope or despair, and small victories that quietly shaped the community's identity. Every story, whether monumental or mundane, held meaning, teaching patience, courage, and the simple wisdom of living attentively. Children often asked questions, eager to understand the why and how behind each tale. The elders answered patiently, occasionally letting their voices drift into reflective pauses, allowing the young listeners time to imagine themselves within the narrative. In these pauses, the hum of evening insects, the gentle rustle of trees, and the distant calls of nocturnal animals filled the silence, blending nature and narrative into a seamless experience. These moments helped embed the stories in memory, not as abstract lessons, but as experiences felt in the heart. Many stories carried subtle humor, and laughter punctuated even the most serious of histories. A tale of a mischievous cousin who accidentally let chickens roam freely through town, or of a clumsy delivery boy who tripped over barrels would elicit gentle chuckles, reinforcing the human nature behind historical events. Humor made the past approachable and human, reminding listeners that those who lived before them experienced the same joys, frustrations, and small victories that defined their own lives. Some elders shared cautionary tales, highlighting the consequences of impatience, greed, or hasty decisions. These narratives, though gentle in tone, carried weight. Listeners learned that history was more than dates and facts. It was a mosaic of choices and their reverberations across time. Each story, carefully curated by its teller, became a mirror reflecting the values, struggles, and aspirations that had quietly shaped the town's character over decades. Through storytelling, porches became classrooms without walls. They nurtured imagination, empathy, and a deep sense of belonging. Younger generations absorbed not only the content of the stories but the rhythm of their telling, the cadence of speech, the pauses, the subtle gestures accompanying each line. In these subtle layers, they learned how history is preserved and passed on, not through rote memorization, but through lived experience and attentive listening. Evenings often stretched long into the night, with some listeners eventually drifting to sleep mid-story. Lanterns dimmed, crickets chirped, and the tales continued quietly in the background, weaving dreams from memory and imagination. The stories persisted, echoing in the minds of those who had listened, carrying the weight and warmth of shared experience. By the time the night concluded, the porch had transformed into a bridge across time. It connected generations, past to present, ensuring that the wisdom, humor, and resilience of ancestors were not lost but imbued into the fabric of everyday life. In these moments, the porch transcended its physical boundaries, becoming a vessel for the timeless human need to remember, to teach, and to belong. Section 10. The enduring echo of evening porches. As the final embers of twilight faded into night, the small-town porch stood as a silent witness to countless stories, shared laughter, and whispered confidences. Even as modernity crept into daily life, with automobiles replacing horse-drawn carriages and electricity flickering into homes, the essence of the porch remained, an enduring space where human connection and reflection intertwined. It was a place where time slowed, allowing the rhythm of the day to ease into the gentle cadence of evening, where neighbors, friends, and families gathered not out of obligation, but from a shared understanding of the porch's quiet magic. The stories told on these porches carried with them an enduring intimacy. They weren't bound by history books or rigid facts, but by the lived experiences and emotions of those who had walked the streets of the town long before. Through these narratives, listeners discovered a profound continuity. Each generation connected to the next, learning resilience, humor, and the subtle wisdom of past lives. The porch became a stage for the everyday heroism of ordinary people, whose small acts of kindness, courage, and creativity shaped the collective heart of the town. Even in moments of hardship, when winters were harsh and crops failed, or when illness and uncertainty touched every household, the porch offered solace. It was a place where stories of perseverance and hope found eager ears. Neighbors shared not only tales of struggle, but also the strategies for overcoming them, imparting lessons that were practical, emotional, and often surprisingly poetic. These lessons weren't formal. They were woven into the cadence of the conversation, enriched by the flickering shadows of lantern light and the crisp night air. The sensory tapestry of the porch added depth to every encounter. The smell of fresh-cut grass, the creak of wooden floorboards, the gentle hum of cicadas, and the occasional distant bark of a dog became part of the storytelling. Each element heightened the immersion, allowing listeners to step fully into the narrative world. Through these details, history was not simply remembered, it was felt, experienced, and internalized. Even as digital screens and modern distractions now dominate evenings, the porch's legacy persists. The principle it embodied, a slow, intentional sharing of life and knowledge, remains timeless. In quiet reflection, one can imagine the echoes of these conversations carried forward, inspiring mindfulness, empathy, and a sense of rootedness even in fast-paced contemporary life. The porch teaches us that connection, storytelling, and the attentive sharing of experience are invaluable, transcending generations and technological change. In the modern context, perhaps we've lost some of the simplicity of these gatherings, yet the essence endures. Evening rituals, whether they involve shared meals, conversation, or listening to stories, can capture the same sense of intimacy and reflection that porches once effortlessly provided. The lessons of small-town America remind us to slow down, to notice, and to honor the voices of those who came before us, keeping their wisdom alive through attentive listening and thoughtful reflection. As we close this journey, let us carry the quiet echoes of those porches into our own lives. Let the spirit of shared stories, gentle conversation, and attentive presence guide our nights and shape our days. And as sleep eventually draws near, may we remember that even in silence, the warmth of human connection lingers, softly, persistently, and beautifully, like a lantern's glow illuminating a porch on a quiet summer evening.